Tyler, what makes this a myth? Why is it a myth? Because doesn't marriage make our desire for sex lessen when we're routinely having it with our marriage partner?
In a healthy and committed marriage, the desire for intimacy, not necessarily sex, should actually increase. And as a byproduct of that intimate nature of marriage, the physical intimacy may also increase. The likelihood, yeah, it will increase. It's just a whole different paradigm, whole different experience when we're engaged in that committed relationship, intimacy. It's just a different ballgame, if you will.
Yeah, I think too, specifically for Christians who grow up with that message, and then, it playing out that I saved myself for marriage, that it may be the first time you're actually experiencing, sex as, God created it, sexual intercourse, being able to do it without shame. And, for me, if anything, it just widened my imagination to what could be, when it came to sex. And so I think for me, it didn't lessen the desire whatsoever. It just amplified it, if anything. It just made, my imagination wander. And, especially when it comes to my struggle with pornography that I had had. And I'm still so grateful that betrayal didn't play out and blow up my marriage, that I started getting healthy before. But the expectations I had because of pornography and my struggle with it, that got copy and pasted over onto my sex life inside of marriage. And so if anything, it actually could have, and I don't want to put this because this isn't something I put on my wife, but I think in some ways it actually perpetuated my addiction to sex, my, addiction to wanting to, have an orgasm and use somebody else's body for my pleasure. And so I think it just, yeah, it caused more issues for me than anything.
Yeah, well, you think about something we say often at Pure Desire, and I remember I heard it in my first year, that your sexual addiction or your porn addiction has nothing to do with sex. And at first to me that sounded nonsensical. It's like, well, what are you talking about? But then of course you learn in the journey that we've been using pornography or acting out sexually to as a way to medicate pain, as a way to escape difficulty and messiness of life, as a way to numb out to things that we don't want to feel. And the reality is that in marriage, and this was my experience, like marriage, the sex becomes hopefully about that physical connection with your spouse. You like each other, you're drawn to each other, you have that freedom for physical intimacy. And that was happening while simultaneously I still had unmet needs for what do I do with my pain? How do I escape these feelings? And it's the pattern I had taught myself for so many years before marriage. And then kind of as you brought up, Trevor, in marriage, you feel pain, you feel frustrations, you feel things that maybe actually you've never quite felt before. And your brain, your body, your heart has learned, oh, the way I deal with these is I escape. And so that pattern doesn't go away because the source of it is still present. And if we're not attentive to this is why I escaped pornography or escaped to acting out sexually, those patterns are still there and can be concurrent with regular sexual intimacy with your spouse, because they're kind of two. I mean, obviously they're connected and related topics, but the purpose for entering into both of them is entirely different. So both can be true, and if we don't address the unmet needs that led us into our addictive behaviors, marriage doesn't just magically make them go away.
If I can make the distinction between intimacy and sex, because those are very, very different concepts, very different experiences. In a committed marriage, sex should be intimate. Outside of that committed marriage, say pre-marriage, there's not a lot of intimacy involved. And so to learn intimacy once entering marriage can be extremely challenging.